My son texted me, "We're cutting ties. Don't come to Christmas dinner anymore." And the whole family chat went quiet. The next morning I made one phone call that changed everything forever. If you're watching this, please like this video and tell me where you're from. What Tommy didn't know was that I owned the house he lived in. Before we continue, first let me thank you for watching Granny's Voice. Please subscribe and tell us where you're watching from in the comments. We might give you a shout out in our next video. Today's special shout out goes to LaTanya Burke from Washington, D.C. Thank you for being part of our family. Now, let me tell you everything. The message came at 2:30 in the afternoon on a cold Thursday. I was sitting in my kitchen, making soup for my sick neighbor when my phone buzzed. The family group chat had a new message. "Mom, we've talked about this as a family. It's time we cut ties. Please don't plan on coming to holiday dinners anymore. This is better for everyone." I stared at those words on my small phone screen. 25 years of Christmas mornings, birthday parties, and family meals. Gone with a few thumb taps. My daughter-in-law Sarah added a thumbs up. My other son Mark left it on red. My sister Betty didn't say anything. Nobody stood up for me. Not one person defended their mother. I took a picture of the message. Always keep records, dear ones. Always keep proof. I looked back at old messages and saw the truth. Pool parties I wasn't invited to. Summer trips they took without telling me. Graduations where I found out from Facebook. They had been pushing me out for months. The newest photo Sarah posted showed their vacation in Florida. The beach house I helped them buy. The car I co-signed for. Tommy's job at the company my late husband started. Everything they had came from our family money. But somehow I was the problem. I put my phone down and walked to my back porch. My garden was full of flowers I'd planted over 30 years. This house held so many memories. Birthday parties, Christmas mornings, family dinners around my old oak table. How sad that my own children wanted to throw all that away. My old rotary phone sat on the kitchen counter. I picked it up and called a number I'd kept for years but never used. 2 rings. "Hello, Mrs. Peterson," I said when he answered. "I think it's time we talked about that business matter." The voice on the other end paused. Then he chuckled. "I was wondering when you'd call about this." "Well, I'm calling now. How soon can we meet?" "I can be at your house in 30 minutes if that works." I hung up and looked at myself in the hallway mirror. The woman looking back wasn't the same one who read that mean text an hour ago. This woman had straight shoulders and fire in her eyes. Tommy wanted to cut ties. Fine. I'd show him what cutting ties really meant. My phone started ringing. Tommy calling from his work phone, probably scared about my silence. I didn't answer and watched his name show up again and again. How funny. Yesterday I was trash. Today I was worth 50 phone calls. I typed back into the family chat. Message received and understood. Enjoy your last family dinner. Then I left the group chat forever. Some people burn bridges slowly. Others blow them up and watch the pieces fall. Today I felt like using dynamite. The family panic started within minutes. Tommy called 37 times before switching to angry text messages. I drank tea and watched his fear grow while I planned exactly how to teach him about respect. "Mom, what did you mean by last dinner? Answer your phone right now. This isn't funny anymore." Sarah is crying. "Are you happy now?" Sarah is crying. "How rich?" The woman who spent 3 years erasing me from family photos was now upset because I finally fought back. I saved every message as proof. My doorbell rang. "Mrs. Johnson, your visitor is here," my neighbor called through the window. "Send him in, dear. And please no visitors for the next 2 hours. Whatever happens, I'm not home to anyone else." Mr. Peterson walked into my living room wearing a nice suit and carrying a briefcase. He looked like a man who solved problems for a living. "Hello, Mrs. Johnson," he said, shaking my hand firmly. "You look ready for business." "I haven't started yet." I led him to my dining room where papers covered my table like battle plans. "Coffee. We're celebrating." "What exactly are we celebrating?" "Tommy's education. He's about to learn what happens when you disrespect the woman who owns your house. Mr. Peterson's eyes got big as he looked at the paperwork. These are the house deeds. All 3 properties. I never liked controlling people. But I suppose today I'm feeling very controlling indeed. He sat in my dining chair, putting on his reading glasses with the confidence of someone who'd handled bigger cases. Tell me everything, Mrs. Johnson. I pulled out a thick folder. Bank statements, loan papers, property records, photos of Tommy and Sarah living like rich people. The kind of proof that shows exactly who paid for what. Tommy thinks he's been smart, using my money to buy things, putting my house in his name without asking, making me co-sign loans while treating me like garbage. I flipped through pages of financial records. And Sarah, sweet Sarah, has been spending money from the account I set up for emergencies. Shopping trips, fancy dinners, weekend getaways. All on my dime while they planned to throw me away. Mr. Peterson whistled softly. This is financial abuse. Elder abuse, really. Among other not nice things. Fraud, theft, emotional abuse. It's like they were trying to see how much they could hurt one old lady. My phone rang again with another call from Tommy. I ignored it without looking and watched Mr. Peterson's serious expression. You're not answering. I learned that trick from them. Funny how family communication becomes one way when it's convenient for them. I added Mr. Peterson's number to my phone under Justice Helper. So, what's your plan, Mrs. Johnson? Simple. You help me take back everything that's legally mine. The house Tommy lives in, the car loan I co-signed, the credit cards in my name. Tommy is about to learn that actions have results. Sarah is going to discover that stealing from the wrong person can end badly. I softened a little. And my grandson Jake will finally see what real strength looks like. Mr. Peterson signed papers with a fancy pen. This is going to be quite something to watch, Mrs. Johnson. Oh dear, I said, raising my coffee cup. Quite something doesn't begin to cover it. The proof I needed came from Sarah's own Facebook posts. While Tommy sent me angry voicemails, his wife was posting pictures from their emergency family meeting, complete with expensive restaurant food and fancy drinks. Some emergency indeed. I sat in my pajamas, drinking coffee, watching their pathetic damage control unfold on social media. Sarah had tagged their location at some fancy steakhouse because nothing says family crisis like $100 meals. The woman had the survival skills of a goldfish. But the message that made me completely sure I was doing the right thing came from my grandson Jake. Sweet 16-year-old Jake, the only family member with a working brain and a good heart. He called me after midnight, voice shaking. Grandma, they're saying you've gone crazy. Dad says you threatened to destroy the family out of spite. And what do you think, sweetheart? I think they're lying, Grandma. You don't do things out of spite. You do things because they're right. He paused. But Grandma, they're telling everyone you never loved Dad, that you only cared about money and control. I sat in my dark kitchen, looking out at the moon. 28 years of raising Tommy, working 2 jobs to give him everything. And this was how they rewrote our story. Jake, do you remember when you broke your leg at age 10? Yeah, at the skate park. Who took you to the hospital? You did, Grandma. Dad was at work. Mom was at book club. Who stayed with you for 4 days, sleeping in that terrible hospital chair? You did. His voice got softer. You brought me puzzle books and snuck in hamburgers when the nurses weren't looking. Your father visited once for 15 minutes to take a selfie for Instagram. I let that truth sink in. Does that sound like a grandmother who doesn't love her family? Long silence. Jake, I need you to understand something important. This house has been in our family for 40 years. I worked 3 jobs to pay for it, saved every penny to make it beautiful. Your father and Sarah have been treating it like their personal piggy bank while planning to throw me out of my own family. Throw you out how, Grandma? I explained in words a smart teenager would understand easily. The house deed tricks, the money they took without asking, the credit cards they used in my name, the loans they made me sign. Jake understood the problems within minutes. Holy cow, Grandma. Language, dear. But yes, holy cow indeed. So when you called Mr. Peterson yesterday, I called someone who can help me get back what's legally mine. Someone who won't let family feelings get in the way of what's right. Are you going to kick them out, Grandma? I thought about the question carefully, stirring my coffee slowly. I'm going to give them exactly what they deserve based on their choices, Jake. Nothing more, nothing less. Your father wanted to cut ties. Well, I'm very good at cutting things cleanly. Jake laughed despite being worried. You're kind of scary, Grandma. Thank you, sweetheart. It's taken 73 years to learn how to be properly scary. After Jake hung up, I made chamomile tea and looked over Mr. Peterson's legal paperwork. He'd moved fast, finding problems that made my evidence look like child's play. Tommy and Sarah weren't just thieves. They were sloppy thieves, leaving paper trails everywhere. Tomorrow the real lesson would begin. Mr. Peterson's first legal meeting made my son panic like never before. He demanded answers about property ownership, access to bank records, and explanations for every major purchase in the last 5 years. Tommy called me 91 times. I counted while getting my hair done at the salon. Mrs. Johnson, my hairstylist, asked, "Should I answer that phone? It keeps buzzing like crazy." "Oh no, dear, let it buzz. It's like a very annoying alarm clock. Eventually the battery dies." She laughed while curling my silver hair. By lunchtime, Mr. Peterson texted updates that made my day brighter than Christmas morning. Tommy had tried claiming the house transfers were legitimate gifts. Sarah insisted the emergency fund purchases were necessary family expenses. Apparently, a $3,000 purse was essential for family emergencies. I called Jake during his lunch break at school. "Grandma, kids at school are talking about some legal stuff happening to Dad. Someone posted about it on social media." "How interesting. What are they saying?" "That some lawyer is asking Dad about money stuff. That maybe he's in trouble." He paused. "Dad tried calling me this morning. I didn't answer." "Good boy. What would you have said if you had answered?" "Probably something about getting what you deserve." I nearly choked on my sandwich. "I've raised you right, Jake. Actually, Grandma, I have something to tell you. I've been keeping track of their spending for months for a school project about family budgets." His voice got sneaky. "Want to see Dad's credit card bills from this year?" "Jake Johnson, you clever, sneaky child. Email them right now." 15 minutes later, I was looking at financial records that would make a judge very interested. Fancy vacations charged to emergency funds. Personal shopping labeled as household necessities. A $15,000 pool renovation listed as home repairs. I sent everything to Mr. Peterson with the subject line, "Dessert course." His response came back instantly. "You've raised a wonderfully sharp grandson, Mrs. Johnson." At exactly 3 o'clock my house phone rang. Tommy calling from his office. "Mom, we need to talk." "Do we? Because yesterday you seemed quite clear about cutting ties." I was angry. Sarah was upset about the lawyer asking questions. "Upset about being caught stealing, you mean?" "She wasn't stealing. Those purchases were legitimate family expenses." I laughed so hard I almost dropped the phone. "Tommy, sweetheart, in what world is a designer handbag a legitimate family expense? Are we preparing for a fashion emergency?" Silence. "Mom. Mr. Peterson is threatening to take the house back." "How terrible. Maybe you should have thought about that before treating me like garbage." "She's demanding to see personal bank accounts." "How rude of her. Almost like she thinks you've been doing something wrong." "This isn't a joke, Mom. You're going to ruin us." "You're absolutely right. Stealing from family is very serious business." I looked at my fresh manicure. "I hear orange jail uniforms are quite slimming though." "Mom, please. We can fix this. We can pay back whatever we borrowed." "Borrowed? How generous of you to finally admit you took my money." The fear in his voice was music to my ears. Yesterday I was dead weight. Today I was his only hope. The irony was so perfect it could win awards. What do you want, Mom? Nothing you're capable of giving, Tommy. Money. I'll get you money. With what? Your emergency fund is frozen. The sound he made was somewhere between a whimper and a dying animal. How do you know about? I know everything, dear boy. I've known for months. I was just waiting for the right moment to use it. I hung up and immediately called Mr. Peterson. How are things progressing? Like Christmas morning for lawyers, Mrs. Johnson. We found 4 fraudulent transfers, fake emergency expenses, and enough evidence to keep investigators busy for months. And Tommy, crumbling like a stale cookie. Sarah's already called 3 different lawyers. Perfect. Phase 2 starts tomorrow. The first big confrontation happened at Tommy's workplace, where he tried to get his boss to pressure me into dropping the legal case. He walked into a carefully planned trap that left him speechless and me very satisfied. I arrived wearing my best church dress, the blue one that made me look like I could run a corporation before breakfast. Mr. Peterson had arranged for me to meet Tommy's boss as a concerned family member, which was legal speak for front row seat to watch your son embarrass himself. Tommy stood in the conference room, surrounded by nervous co-workers who suddenly found their coffee cups very interesting. Sarah sat beside him, holding her expensive purse like a security blanket. Poor thing looked like she'd aged 10 years in 1 week. This legal action is harassment, Tommy began, his voice shaking. Mr. Peterson is overstepping his authority as Mom's lawyer. Actually, Mr. Peterson corrected smoothly, I'm operating well within legal bounds as Mrs. Johnson's representative in recovering fraudulently transferred assets. Tommy's face went white as paper. That's impossible. Mom agreed to help us with the house. Help, yes. Sign over legal ownership without her knowledge, no. Mr. Peterson smiled like a teacher correcting a very slow student. We have documented evidence of forged signatures and unauthorized transfers. The temperature in the room dropped 20 degrees. Co-workers shifted uncomfortably, suddenly realizing they were watching an execution, not a meeting. Forged signatures. Tommy's voice cracked like a teenager's. Oh yes, handwriting analysis is fascinating these days. Mr. Peterson opened a folder thick enough to use as a weapon. Would you like to explain these documents to everyone? He slid papers across the table. Bank forms, property transfers, loan applications with signatures that looked suspiciously similar. Tommy's hands shook as he recognized his own forgeries spread out for everyone to see. This is a misunderstanding, he stammered. Those were legitimate transfers Mom agreed to. A $70,000 house transfer is legitimate, his boss asked sharply. Signed without a lawyer present, Mr. Peterson added helpfully. And backdated to avoid tax implications. The silence that followed was thick enough to cut with a knife and serve at dinner parties. Sarah made a small crying sound, like a wounded puppy realizing the trap had already closed. I stood slowly, letting my 73 years of life experience command the room. Every eye turned to me, and I enjoyed the moment like fine wine. Tommy, I said, my voice carrying across the room like steel wrapped in velvet. Do you remember what I taught you about honesty when you were 8 years old? Mom, please don't. You broke Mrs. Garcia's window and blamed the neighbor boy. A child who had nothing lost his allowance because of your lie. I walked closer, my sensible shoes clicking against the floor like a timer counting down. What did I make you do? Tommy's face crumpled. Confess and pay for the window myself. Exactly. Actions have consequences. Always. I turned to address the room. My son has forgotten this basic lesson. Sarah has helped him forget it. Today they remember. Mr. Peterson consulted his legal notepad like a doctor reading test results. Tommy Johnson, effective immediately. You must vacate the property at 425 Oak Street and return all fraudulently obtained assets. You can't do this to us. Actually, we can and we are. Mr. Peterson's smile could have frozen a lake in summer. Sarah Johnson, you're banned from the property and will face charges for financial elder abuse. Sarah finally found her voice. Mrs. Johnson, you're destroying your own family. I looked at this woman who'd systematically pushed me out of family photos, who'd stolen from the emergency fund I'd saved for medical bills, convinced my son to treat me like a burden, and was now calling me family because she needed help. Sweetheart, I said, adjusting my pearl earrings. I'm not destroying anything. I'm simply taking out the trash. Security appeared like magic. Tommy and Sarah were escorted out like common criminals, which is exactly what they were. The remaining co-workers sat in shocked silence. Now then, Mr. Peterson said cheerfully, let's discuss how to prevent this kind of family fraud in the future. Through the window, I watched Tommy and Sarah standing on the sidewalk, looking lost and small and completely defeated. Justice, I decided, tasted absolutely delicious. The supporters came from unexpected places, proving that Tommy and Sarah's reign of terror had hurt more people than just me. By the end of the week, I had an army of allies. Jake called Monday morning, voice bright with satisfaction. Grandma, you won't believe what's happening at school. My economics teacher wants to use your case as an example. How seniors can protect themselves from financial abuse. How educational of her. Also, 2 of Dad's old friends called me. They want to apologize to you personally. Apologize for what? For not speaking up when Dad was bad-mouthing you to everyone. Apparently, Tommy had been telling people you were getting senile, that you couldn't handle money anymore. Mom's lawyer tricks were necessary to protect you from yourself. I sat in my silk pajamas, drinking coffee that cost more than Sarah's fancy lipstick, and felt something I hadn't felt in years. Vindication. Not just from legal victory but from moral clarity. Jake, invite those friends for coffee somewhere nice. My treat. Are you building a support team, Grandma? I'm building something better, sweetheart. I'm building proof that we were right all along. Mr. Peterson called 2 hours later, practically singing with happiness. Mrs. Johnson, you need to see today's investigation results. Tommy wasn't just stealing from you. He was stealing from his workplace too. How much? $12,000 over 2 years. Fake expense reports, unauthorized purchases, equipment that mysteriously disappeared. His voice turned sharp. Your son's workplace funded his and Sarah's fancy lifestyle too. I felt my blood pressure rise dangerously. Stealing from me was personal. Stealing from hard-working people who trusted him was unforgivable. Mr. Peterson, I want every penny recovered and returned where it belongs. I don't care what it costs. Already working on it. Also, the police want to interview you tomorrow. Apparently, your evidence collection was so good, they're calling it a perfect case. How flattering. One more thing. The local news wants an exclusive interview. Grandmother fights back against family fraud is their working headline. I thought about this carefully. Public attention versus private satisfaction. The chance to tell my story versus the pleasure of watching Tommy squirm in silence. Schedule it for Thursday. That afternoon, I met with Tommy's former friends at the coffee shop downtown, the same place where Sarah used to meet her book club before she got too fancy for regular people. 2 women, both longtime neighbors, both looking embarrassed about months of silence I'd never understood. Mrs. Johnson, said Linda Martinez, who lived 3 houses down, we thought you knew about the things Tommy was saying, the stories about your health, the claims that you couldn't handle your own affairs anymore. I was kept in the dark about everything, I admitted. My own son made sure I couldn't see what people were thinking. We wanted to check on you directly, but Tommy said you'd moved to a nursing home, that you couldn't remember conversations. My coffee mug trembled in my hands. He told people I was in a nursing home. Complete memory loss, added Carol Williams, my former bridge partner. Said you couldn't recognize family anymore. That's why he needed to take control of your finances and property. The coffee shop's cheerful atmosphere suddenly felt crushing. My own son had declared me mentally gone to justify his theft, not just from me, but from every person who'd ever trusted our family name. Ladies, I said, setting down my cup with careful precision, would you like to help me make sure justice is properly served? Their eager agreement confirmed what I'd suspected. Tommy and Sarah hadn't just made enemies of me. They'd created a whole network of people hoping for their downfall. Perfect. Mr. Peterson is hiring new assistants for the legal case. You'll get calls tomorrow about helping prevent this from happening to other families. Mrs. Johnson, Linda said softly. Why are you helping us? We failed to protect you. You didn't fail, dears. You were lied to by people you trusted. I smiled, feeling my mother's strong spirit straighten my spine. And because no one lies about my mental health and gets away with it. Walking out of that coffee shop, I realized I wasn't just seeking payback anymore. I was leading a movement, and every movement needs willing helpers. Tommy had no idea what army was marching toward him. The revenge reached its perfect peak when Mr. Peterson called a neighborhood meeting and exposed everything publicly. Tommy's complete financial destruction played out in front of everyone who'd ever doubted my abilities. And I watched with satisfaction that felt like Christmas morning. The community center buzzed with curiosity as neighbors, former friends, local reporters, and police officers filled every folding chair. I chose a seat in the front row, wearing my late mother's diamond brooch and a smile that could cut through steel. Tommy sat across the aisle, looking like he'd aged 30 years in 2 weeks. Mr. Peterson commanded the podium like a teacher leading a class about consequences. Ladies and gentlemen, today's presentation concerns the systematic financial abuse of Mrs. Dorothy Johnson by her son Tommy Johnson and his wife Sarah Johnson. The portable screen lit up with evidence that made my careful record-keeping look like amateur work. Bank records, forged documents, email chains discussing creative ways to take Mom's money. Tommy's digital trail of greed displayed in bright colors for everyone to see. Over 3 years, the defendants transferred $47,000 from Mrs. Johnson's accounts, forged property transfers worth $70,000, and used her credit for personal purchases totaling $32,000. A gasp rippled through the audience. Tommy slumped in his chair like a deflated balloon. Sarah wasn't even there. Her lawyer had told her to avoid public appearances after yesterday's arrest. The lifestyle funded by these stolen funds included luxury trips, designer purchases, home renovations, and personal expenses totaling twice Mr. Johnson's actual income. Mr. Peterson clicked to the next slide. Photos of Tommy and Sarah's social media posts. Champagne celebrations funded by Mom's emergency fund. Designer clothes purchased with stolen credit. A kitchen renovation paid for with money meant for my medical bills. The reporter from Channel 7 News took notes frantically. This story would be evening news material within hours. Most disgracefully, when neighbors asked about Mrs. Johnson's well-being, Mr. Johnson told them she had severe dementia and couldn't live independently. The room exploded. Neighbors shouted questions. Former friends demanded answers. And somewhere in the chaos, I heard Tommy make a sound like a broken animal. I stood slowly, letting my presence quiet the room. Everyone fell silent. "If I may," I said, my voice carrying across the space with 73 years of life experience. "I'd like to address my son directly." Mr. Peterson stepped aside with a respectful nod. I walked to the microphone, feeling every eye in the room follow me. This was my moment, the peak of everything I'd built, lost and reclaimed. "Tommy," I said, looking directly at the broken man who'd once been my greatest joy. "Stand up." He rose shakily, looking like he might faint. "You told people I had dementia, that I couldn't remember my own name, that I needed to be protected from myself." My voice remained steady, each word chosen carefully. "You erased me from this community's memory, excluded me from neighborhood gatherings, and made people think I was already gone." The silence was so complete you could hear hearts breaking. "But most of all, Tommy, you forgot who raised you to know right from wrong, who taught you that family means protection, not exploitation." I paused, letting that truth settle. "Today you remember." I turned to address the room. "This house will remain in our family under proper ownership. Every stolen dollar will be returned to its rightful place. Every lie told about my mental health will be corrected publicly." Applause erupted from the neighbor section. Several people wiped away tears. As for my son, I looked back at Tommy, who was crying openly now. Criminal charges have been filed. The authorities will handle justice from here. I'm simply making sure that the truth I've always lived by continues to matter. Mr. Peterson retook the podium. The police have requested that Mr. Johnson remain in town pending further investigation. His passport has been taken as a precaution. I returned to my seat, feeling lighter than I had in years. Around me, neighbors celebrated the promise of truth restored. Former friends cheered the correction of months of lies, and reporters captured every moment of family justice being served. Tommy remained standing, swaying slightly, looking around the room at faces that had once trusted him and now saw only a liar and a thief. Justice, I thought, was even sweeter when served publicly. Through the windows I could see news trucks arriving. This story would be statewide by evening, regional by week's end. My son's shame would follow him everywhere, while my vindication would rebuild the reputation he'd tried to destroy. Perfect. Tommy's desperate attempt at fighting back came through Sarah's sister's lawyer, threatening to sue me for grandparent alienation and emotional manipulation. Their pathetic legal counterattack only made my position stronger and provided more proof of their complete moral emptiness. I was enjoying morning coffee on my back porch when Mr. Peterson called, laughing so hard he could barely breathe. "Mrs. Johnson, you need to see this lawsuit Sarah's family filed. It's comedy gold. What are they claiming now? That you manipulated your advanced age and fragile emotional state to trick innocent young people into returning stolen property." Mr. Peterson's laughter got louder. "They're claiming you have dementia and therefore couldn't legally reclaim your own house." I nearly dropped my coffee mug. The same dementia Tommy claimed I had to justify stealing my money. The very same. Their entire defense strategy is that you're simultaneously too mentally weak to make property decisions and too mentally strong to be held responsible for their prosecution. How wonderfully contradictory. It gets better. They want to reverse our property recovery because you were allegedly under emotional distress when you signed the papers. Apparently, being excluded from family dinners constitutes psychological abuse. I set down my coffee and watched birds playing in my garden fountain. Such peace, such simplicity, rather like my current mood. Mr. Peterson called Channel 7 News. "Schedule an interview for this afternoon. What's your approach? If they want to claim I'm a weak, confused old woman, let's give them a demonstration of exactly how weak and confused I am." 3 hours later, I stood before news cameras wearing my sharpest Sunday dress and a smile that could intimidate bank presidents. Reporters gathered as I approached their microphones, my posture straight as a flagpole, my voice carrying 73 years of life wisdom. "Ladies and gentlemen, I'm here to address recent claims about my mental fitness made by individuals currently facing criminal charges for elder abuse." I pulled out a manila folder thick enough to use as a doorstop. These are the financial records I personally compiled over 18 months, documenting systematic theft from my accounts. Bank statements, property transfers, credit card records, all collected through my allegedly failing mental capacity. Chuckles rippled through the press group. I want to be clear about something. My son Tommy and his wife Sarah spent 3 years stealing from my savings, emergency funds, and property ownership. When confronted with proof of their crimes, they didn't apologize or offer to make things right. Instead, they hired lawyers to attack my mental abilities. A reporter raised her hand. "Mrs. Johnson, how do you respond to claims that you were tricked by outside influences?" I respond by pointing out that I raised 4 children as a single mother, ran a successful catering business for 30 years, and successfully identified and documented financial crimes that police officers called textbook evidence. Paused for effect. If that's failing mental capacity, I'd hate to see what they consider sharp thinking. More laughter. Furthermore, I'd like to address claims of emotional manipulation. Yes, being excluded from family dinners was painful. Do you know what's more painful? Learning that your son told neighbors you had dementia to justify stealing your life savings. Learning that emergency money meant for medical bills funded vacation trips. learning that your own family saw you as an obstacle to their criminal plans. The room fell quiet. So yes, I was under stress. The stress of discovering that people I loved and trusted were thieves. The stress of realizing I'd raised a son who would lie about my mental health to steal from senior citizens. The stress of watching my reputation being destroyed by people who thought my kindness meant I was stupid. I closed the folder with a sharp snap. Tommy and Sarah Johnson are criminals who've been caught, charged, and held responsible. Their attempt to claim I'm mentally unfit only proves they still don't understand the most basic lesson. Actions have consequences. A reporter called out. What's next for your property? Staying exactly where it belongs. In the hands of someone who earned it through honest work and 40 years of mortgage payments. I gathered my papers. Thank you for your time. Walking away from those microphones, I felt something I hadn't experienced since this nightmare began. Not just vindication but genuine calm. The public record was crystal clear. The legal record was unshakable. And my reputation was not only fixed, but stronger than ever. Mr. Peterson waited by his car, grinning like someone who'd just won the lottery. That was beautiful, Mrs. Johnson. That was necessary, dear. Now Tommy knows that even from his position of complete shame, he still can't hurt me. My phone buzzed with a text from Jake. Grandma, you're famous on Facebook. Tough Grandma Fights Back is being shared everywhere. I smiled, thinking about how perfectly everything had worked out. Sometimes justice doesn't just happen quietly. Sometimes it arrives with camera crews and standing ovations. Tommy had tried one last desperate attack. Instead, he'd given me complete and total victory. My complete transformation reached its peak when I walked into my first community board meeting as the new neighborhood watch coordinator, commanding respect I'd earned through courage and demonstrating strength I'd claimed through truth. The woman who entered that room was nothing like the one Tommy had dismissed 2 months earlier. I arrived wearing my mother's pearl bracelet, the one I'd worn the morning Tommy sent his cruel text, and a navy dress that announced authority before I spoke a word. My silver hair was styled in a confident cut that showed I meant business. The woman reflected in the meeting room's windows was someone I barely recognized. Shoulders back, spine straight, eyes sharp as laser beams. Ladies and gentlemen, I said, taking my seat at the head of the table where community leaders had once dismissed my concerns. Welcome to our new Neighborhood Watch program. The board members, some old neighbors, some new allies carefully chosen by our group, listened with complete attention as I outlined our plan to protect senior citizens from family fraud. Every person Tommy had lied about would be protected. Every trick he'd used would be documented and prevented. Every senior citizen would know their rights and have people watching out for them. Our first month shows remarkable results, Mr. Peterson reported, reading from official documents that painted a picture of rapid community healing. Senior safety awareness is at an all-time high. Family fraud reports have increased 40% as people gain confidence to speak up. And we've prevented 3 attempted scams against elderly residents. Board member Mrs. Chen raised her hand. Mrs. Johnson, what about Tommy's criminal trial? Tommy and Sarah face charges for elder abuse, fraud, and theft. Their trial starts next month. I'll be testifying as the main witness, and our community reputation is stronger than ever. Yesterday, the State Attorney General's office asked permission to use our case as training material for elder abuse prosecutors. The county commissioner wants our Neighborhood Watch program implemented countywide. Channel 7 News called us a model for senior protection. Approving nods circled the table. These people had watched me systematically rebuild trust, restore community safety, and emerge as a leader worthy of statewide recognition. The difference between my leadership and Tommy's lies couldn't have been more obvious. What's our 5-year plan? Asked new board member Mr. Rodriguez, whom I'd recruited specifically for his experience in community organizing. Realistic goals include expanding our senior protection network to 5 neighboring areas, creating educational programs about family fraud, and establishing a legal fund to help other victims fight back. I clicked to the next slide in my presentation. We're also launching a scholarship program for young people who want to study elder law, fully funded by recovered stolen money. The irony was delicious. Money Tommy and Sarah had stolen from my emergency fund would now educate future lawyers who'd protect other seniors from similar crimes. "Mrs. Johnson," asked longtime neighbor Mr. Williams, "how do you feel about your transformation?" I considered the question carefully, looking around the room at faces that showed genuine respect, rather than the polite dismissal I'd endured when Tommy controlled the narrative about my mental health. 8 weeks ago, I was told I had dementia, excluded from family gatherings, dismissed as a burden. My voice carried across the room with confidence earned through battle. Today, I'm coordinator of a county-wide senior protection program, a key witness in a criminal case, and apparently something of a local celebrity. Laughter filled the room. The transformation isn't just personal, it's community-wide. Tommy led through lies, theft, and manipulation. I lead through honesty, protection, and earned trust. I stood, feeling every inch of my height, every year of my experience, every ounce of authority I'd reclaimed through smart fighting. The difference is that when people follow you because of lies, they abandon you when they learn the truth. When they follow you because of respect, they become partners in building something lasting. Mr. Peterson nodded approvingly. Speaking of partners, we've received cooperation requests from 8 communities that specifically mentioned your leadership as their reason for wanting our help. And senior participation in community activities is up 50%. Isolation reports are down 70%. Yesterday, 2 families who'd been hiding financial abuse came forward asking for help. I thought about the woman who'd read that heartbreaking text message 9 weeks ago. She'd been hurt, confused, questioning her own worth. The woman standing at this table had answers to all those questions and the power to make sure no other senior citizen would face them alone. Ladies and gentlemen, this community will never again allow senior citizens to be victimized by people who mistake cruelty for family loyalty or theft for love. I gathered my papers with movements that commanded attention. We protect our elders through education, support them through community, and prove that doing right isn't just morally correct, it's practically effective. The applause that followed was something Tommy had never earned, not once in all his years of lying to these same neighbors. The public recognition reached its perfect peak when our Neighborhood Watch program won the State Community Service Award with me accepting the honor before an audience that included former doubters who now stood and cheered my complete comeback. I walked onto the convention center stage wearing the pearl bracelet that had become my symbol of survival and a burgundy dress that announced victory without needing words. 2 months earlier, I'd been dismissed as mentally incompetent. Tonight, I was being celebrated as a model of community courage. "Ladies and gentlemen," the presenter announced, "this year's State Community Service Award goes to the Oak Street Neighborhood Watch under the inspirational leadership of Coordinator Dorothy Johnson for demonstrating that community protection drives both safety and social connection." The audience erupted in cheers as I approached the podium. In the front row, I spotted Jake beaming with pride, Mr. Peterson recording on his phone, and several reporters who'd followed my story from family disgrace to state recognition. "Thank you," I said, my voice carrying across the auditorium with confidence earned through struggle. For months ago, I discovered that my own family had been lying about my mental health while stealing from my accounts and property. Today, every stolen dollar has been recovered and every lie has been publicly corrected. The applause grew louder. But this award isn't just about exposing family fraud. It's about proving that communities built on truth don't just survive, they flourish. Since implementing our senior protection program, Oak Street has seen increased neighborhood involvement, reduced isolation among elderly residents, and prevented multiple financial scams against vulnerable families. I held up the Crystal Award, watching light break through its surfaces like hope breaking through darkness. I want to share this recognition with every neighbor who chose truth over convenient lies, every board member who supported protection over politeness, and every senior citizen who found the courage to speak up about abuse. The standing ovation lasted 4 full minutes. As applause washed over me, I thought about the journey from humiliation to honor, from dismissal to leadership, from victim to champion. After the ceremony, Reporters surrounded me for interviews that would broadcast regionally. A documentary crew requested permission to film our neighborhood watch program. 2 book publishers wanted my story. The governor's office mentioned my name for a statewide senior advocacy position. "Mrs. Johnson," asked the state public radio correspondent, "what would you say to other seniors facing similar family fraud?" That loyalty to family doesn't require accepting criminal behavior. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do is hold people responsible for their choices. I smiled with satisfaction that felt as warm as summer sunshine. Actions have consequences, always. Do you have any regrets about exposing Tommy's crimes? My only regret is not acting sooner. Every day I hesitated was another day other seniors might face similar abuse. Another day financial crimes went unpunished. Another day community trust was being damaged by unchallenged lies. Paused, choosing my words carefully. I regret allowing love to delay justice. What's next for your neighborhood watch program? Excellence and expansion. We're training volunteers in 12 new communities, launching educational workshops about senior rights, and creating a hotline for families facing financial abuse. I adjusted my mother's pearl bracelet. We're proving that protection isn't just the right choice, it's the effective choice. Later that evening at the celebration dinner in my honor, I received calls from community leaders, elected officials, and senior advocates who'd been inspired by my story. The mayor wanted to discuss citywide senior protection initiatives. A state senator invited me to testify before the legislature about elder abuse prevention. The Attorney General mentioned my case as a model for prosecution training. Jake found me on the hotel balcony, looking out at the city lights that sparkled like stars scattered across dark velvet. "Grandma, you're inspiring people everywhere." "I'm helping people protect themselves, sweetheart. There's a difference. Are you happy?" I considered the question while watching traffic flow like rivers of light below us. Was I happy or was I something more complex? Satisfied, purposeful, complete. I'm at peace, Jake. For the first time in years, I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be, doing exactly what I'm meant to do. I smiled at this young man who'd never doubted my abilities. And yes, that makes me deeply happy. The irony wasn't lost on me. Tommy had tried to destroy my reputation and instead made me more respected than I'd ever been. Sarah had attempted to erase my community standing and instead helped me build something more meaningful than anything I'd achieved before. Sometimes justice doesn't just restore what was taken. Sometimes it gives you something better than what you lost. Tonight, surrounded by recognition I'd earned through bravery, I understood that my greatest victory wasn't defeating Tommy and Sarah. It was becoming the woman I was always meant to be. The new life I've built 4 months later proves that sometimes the best revenge is living so well that your enemies become footnotes. I sit in my sunroom surrounded by community awards instead of legal documents, helping families instead of fighting criminals, and finally understanding what true strength looks like. This morning started like every Sunday for the past 2 months. Jake arrived at 11 with bagels and orange juice from that little bakery near his college, settling into what's become his regular spot at my kitchen table. At 16, he possesses more integrity than his father ever managed, and watching him grow into a man of principle has become one of my greatest pleasures. "Grandma, Mrs. Rodriguez wants to interview you for her thesis about community leadership," he said, pulling school papers from his backpack. "Also, 2 more neighborhoods have asked for help starting their own senior protection programs. How many is that this month?" 9. "You're becoming the go-to expert on community safety programs." He grinned. "Who knew exposing your own son's lies would become a full-time job?" I laughed, reviewing thank you letters from seniors whose families we'd helped. 37 elderly residents now had legal protection, financial security, and community support. The money Sarah had stolen to buy designer shoes now funded legal aid for vulnerable seniors. "Speaking of full-time work," I said, signing certificates for volunteer training graduates, "Mr. Peterson wants to expand our legal clinic." Apparently, families nationwide are requesting the Dorothy Johnson approach to elder protection. Are you interested in traveling, Grandma? At 73, I've discovered I have a talent for community organizing. Why waste it? My phone buzzed with a text from Mr. Peterson. 60 Minutes approved the interview. Dorothy Johnson, the grandmother who fought back. Filming starts Tuesday. The irony was perfect. Tommy had tried to make me disappear and instead made me nationally famous. Jake, do you ever wonder what your father's doing now? His expression grew thoughtful. Actually, I heard from Mom last week. He's working at a hardware store in the next county. Some kind of stock clerk position. He looked. Jake searched for words. Smaller, like he'd gotten physically smaller somehow. And Sarah moved back to her parents' house with the kids. Apparently, she's working at a call center now. I felt something unexpected. Not satisfaction, but a kind of peaceful indifference. These people who'd once seemed so important in my life, who'd caused such pain and anger, had become background characters in a story that was no longer about them. Do you miss them? Jake asked quietly. I miss who I thought they were. The son I believed I'd raised, the family I imagined we could be. I set down my letters and looked at this young man who'd never let me down. But I don't miss the reality of who they actually were. The lies, the theft, the cruelty disguised as family loyalty. The afternoon brought my weekly visit to our community center, where seniors receive financial counseling, legal advice, and social support to prevent isolation and abuse. Today, I was meeting with Elena Vasquez, whose family had tried to force her into signing over her house deed. Mrs. Johnson, Elena said, showing me the legal papers Mr. Peterson had helped her understand. I want you to know what this program means. 6 months ago, I was afraid to answer my own door. Now, I'm helping other grandmothers protect themselves and proving that seniors can be strong and independent. That's exactly why we exist, dear. To prove that age brings wisdom, not weakness. Walking through that building, seeing elderly people of all backgrounds building support networks based on respect rather than exploitation, I understood something profound. My greatest victory wasn't stopping Tommy's criminal behavior. It was creating something better to replace it. As evening fell, I returned to my house and called Mr. Peterson to discuss next week's volunteer training session. Our neighborhood watch program continued growing, now serving over 200 families and recognized nationally as a model for community-based elder protection. Dorothy, Mr. Peterson said, I have news. Tommy called today asking for a meeting. What does he want? To apologize, apparently. To make amends for his behavior and lies. I considered this while watching sunset paint my garden golden. After months of silence, my son wanted reconciliation. Not because he'd found religion or discovered honesty, but because he'd finally realized the cost of his choices. What should I tell him? Tell him I'm busy building something beautiful. If he wants to be part of something meaningful, he can volunteer at the community center like anyone else. Smiled. If he demonstrates real change and genuine remorse over time, we might consider giving him a chance to earn forgiveness. And if he doesn't, then he'll remain exactly what he chose to become, irrelevant to my story. That night, I sat in my garden with a cup of tea, reading thank you notes from families whose lives had been transformed by programs funded with recovered stolen money. In the distance, my neighborhood hummed with the sounds of people living safely and connected to each other. Beautiful and strong despite everything that had tried to harm it. My phone showed 12 missed calls from Tommy. I deleted them without listening. Some relationships can be rebuilt through genuine change and earned forgiveness. Others end when people show you who they really are. The wisdom is knowing the difference and having the courage to act accordingly. Tomorrow I would wake up as Dorothy Johnson, community leader, senior advocate, elder protection expert, and grandmother to an exceptional young man. Not someone's dismissed mother or forgotten neighbor, but a woman who'd built something meaningful from the ashes of betrayal. Sometimes the best revenge isn't destroying your enemies. Sometimes it's becoming so powerful in doing good that their opinions become meaningless, their actions become powerless, and their absence becomes a blessing rather than a loss. In the quiet of my new purpose, surrounded by community instead of conflict, I finally understood what true victory looked like. Looked like peace. Thanks for watching Granny's Voice. Don't forget to subscribe and share your own story in the comments. Your voice matters too.